chairing today's meeting of Cheshire East's Strategic Planning Board. Before I commence the meeting, I will do a little bit of housekeeping for you all, and then I will read the script. Can I ask that all members remain muted with their cameras off, except when they are wishing to speak? If members wish to speak on any item, can they please use the chat facility, which I'm just about to open up so I can see it, or if you are unable to do that, to use your hand. The chat facility should not be used for discussions between members. It should only be used for points of order, or if you are asking to speak, or if there is a problem with your transmission. If any member is leaving, can they also ensure that they use the chat facility to say that they are leaving the meeting if they are leaving for a short or permanent period of time, in order that Sarah can see that there is not a problem with their technology. Similarly, if you have a problem with your technology, please contact somebody as soon as you possibly can. Right, so back to the script. Good morning, councillors, officers, members of the public. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the Strategic Planning Board. As I've previously said, I'm Councillor Stuart Gardner, your chair for today's meeting. I will begin by explaining some ground rules for those taking part in the meetings to follow. Please can you keep your, sorry, I'm repeating myself, your camera and microphone switched off unless I invite you to speak. This is to ensure that only one person can be heard at any time without interruption. This also helps to avoid feedback and background noise and to save bandwidth. For members of the board wishing to speak during a debate, you should raise the procedural point. Please indicate your desire to speak by using the chat facility, which can be accessed via the information bar near the centre of your display. Present today at today's meeting are members of the Strategic Planning Board. I intend to call their name one by one and ask them to switch on their camera and microphone to introduce themselves and confirm that they can hear proceedings. And I will now begin the roll call, starting with Councillor Anthony Critchley.
I can see and hear, Chair.
I can hear you and I can see you. That's fine. Thank you very much, Anthony. Councillor Steve Edgar.
Yes, Chair, I can both see and hear. Thank you.
And I could hear you, but I couldn't see you. Councillor Ashley Farrell. Councillor Farrell. Sarah, are we aware that Councillor Farrell has got...
Hear you? Can you see and hear me?
I can hear you. I can see you. That's fine. Thank you very much. Councillor Peter Groves, I can see you.
I can hear you, Chair. So
thank you very much. I can hear you as well now. So we'll now move to Councillor Steve Hogben. I can see you, Councillor Edgar. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is Councillor Steve Hogben. I can see and hear you, Chair.
And I can see and hear you too.
Thank you.
Councillor David Jeffrey.
Yes, Chair, I'm here. Can you see me?
See and hear, yeah, that's fine.
Right.
Councillor Rob Morton.
Hi, Chair, I can see and hear you.
And we can hear and see you. Thank you very much. Councillor Patrick Redstone.
I can see and hear you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Redstone. Councillor Jackie Wetherall.
Good morning, Chair. I can see and hear you. Hope you can hear and see me.
Thank you very much. Can see and hear you. And finally, Councillor Phil Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I can both see and hear.
And I can hear and see you. Thank you very much. Also present are the following officers who are here to advise the board regarding items on the agenda. They are Sarah Baxter from Democratic Services, Nikki Folan, the planning solicitor, Paul Herders, the highways officer, Rob Law, planning team leader, David Malcolm, the head of planning, and Jeremy Owens, the development planning manager. I will now explain how the board will operate. The planning officer will introduce the item, show slides, photos and plans regarding the site. I will then invite any registered public speakers to address the committee and ask them to switch off on their camera and microphone, to state their name and the name of the group they are representing. I will inform them how much time they have to speak, and they must finish within this time, or their microphones may be muted to enable the meeting to move along. If anything that the public speaker said was unclear, I may allow members to ask questions of clarification. Once they have spoken, the public speakers will turn off their cameras and microphone and listen to the rest of the debate and decision. The planning officer will respond to any issues raised by the public speaker, and then members will be able to ask the planning officer questions before moving to the debate the item. We will be able to ask planning. Sorry, Sorry, it's been answered. Thank you very much. Just for members of the public's attention, that was a message came into my inbox, and I looked to see whether it was relevant, and it's not. So I will now carry on with the script. The planning officer will respond to any issues raised by the public speaker, and then members will be able to ask the planning officer questions before moving to debate the item. I remind members to indicate in a chat function if they wish to speak during the debate. When the debate moves to a close, I will check whether officers have any final advice to give, and then the item and then the terms of the resolution, which will have been moved and seconded, are clear to all. I will then invite each member of the board in alphabetical order to turn on their camera and microphone to confirm their support for the resolution or otherwise by stating for, against, or not voting. The result of the vote will be reported to the meeting. Members of the board can only participate in and vote on the item if they can hear and be heard throughout. If a member loses their connection and is able to alert this fact, the meeting may be able to adjourn for a short period to allow them to reconnect. If they are unable to connect within a short time, the meeting will continue without them and they will be unable to participate or vote on that application. If the live stream of the meeting fails, the meeting will be adjourned for a reasonable length of time to try and restore connection. If it is not possible to do so, the meeting will be postponed to a new date. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and streamed live to the public. Can I also remind members, if they have to leave the virtual meeting and will not be returning, please can they type in the chat to state so officers are aware and they do not think there is an IT issue. Finally, at or around 11 AM, I will be holding a minute's silence in respect of those who lost their lives during the Holocaust. For those of you not aware, today is Holocaust Memorial Day, and if I had not been at this meeting, I would have been attending the Mayor's event for the council to honour those people who died in that dreadful human disaster. So I will, human caused disaster. So I will now, I'm just going to leave momentarily because I'm conscious that a door is open, which is meaning that there will be background noise interrupting my meeting. So I'm going to close the door. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. Right, so I'm now moving to item 1, which is to receive apologies for absence. Sarah, have we received any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chairman, apologies from Councillor Hunter.
Thank you very much. I'll now move to item 2, which is to receive members' declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interests? Councillor Edgar.
Thank you, Chair. My usual declaration of interest as Chair of the Public Rights of Way Committee. All 3 items are on the agenda as being consulted, but I haven't entered any discussions. And also, as I expect a lot of other people have, I've had 2 emails in from outside parties with regards to the first 2 applications. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edgar. Councillor Groves, you have your camera on. Do you wish to declare an interest?
I do indeed, Chair. I'm in the same position as Councillor Edgar, and as much that I too have received 2 items of interest via email.
Okay. Councillor Hogben.
Yeah, well, I'm sure everybody's received a couple of emails regarding the first 2 applications. I've actually got a query, and that is that on the first 2 applications, there is no reference to consultation on public open space. Assuming that that is correct, then I shall not declare an interest as a non-executive director of ANSA. But I shall probably return to that issue when we come to the discussion later.
I will check for you, Councillor Hogben, with the officer now, I note what we will do with regards to the blanket, to those 2 emails that have been received by the whole of the committee, is that will be a blanket notice in the meeting in terms of that we've received it. So we don't need to call the other councillors who put their names in the inbox. That will be covered by you. We will assume that all councillors on this committee have received that email, and that there will be a blanket coverage for those items. So can I ask either Mr. Malcolm or Mr. Law to advise with regards to the first 2 items as to whether or not ANSA were consulted, in order that Councillor Hogben needs to know whether he has to declare an interest?
Yes, Chairman. ANSA were both consulted on the first 2 items.
And have we received responses from them, or?
Not on the first item, but on the second item we have, and you will see in the update report to members that is reported there.
Okay, thank you very much. So back to you, Councillor Hogben.
Well, I've got to say that puzzles me, because there is no reference to such consultation in either report, which I think should have happened in the first.
I think you're.
But since it has been confirmed that ANSA were a consultee, I will declare in the interest of openness and so forth that I'm a non-executive director of ANSA who apparently were consulted on both applications, but I've obviously not discussed or commented on either application through that process. So I will remain in the meeting for both of them. Thank you.
Just for a point of clarification, Mr. Law did say that the consultation responses are referred to with regard to the second application in the update report. So you should be able to find it in there. Okay, right. So are there no further declarations of interest? I will now move to item 3, which is to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, which took place on the 15th of January 2021. Can I ask for someone to propose that these are a correct record of the meeting, or raise any issues they believe of inaccuracy with those minutes, and then for somebody to second that, please? Councillor Edgar?
I'd like to propose them, please.
Okay, and does that have a proposition have a seconder? Can I see anybody seconding? Somebody who's Councillor Hogben? Councillor Hogben?
This is so clunky. Yes, I'm happy to second.
Thank you very much. So I am now going to ask each member of the committee in alphabetical order to confirm they support or otherwise that proposition by stating for, against, or not voting. When members do so, will they please turn on their camera and microphone in order to identify themselves. So beginning with Councillor Critchley.
Not voting, Chair.
Councillor Steve Edgar.
For.
Councillor Ashley Farrell. Councillor Farrell.
For.
Thank you very much. Councillor Groves.
Not voting, Chair, as I had sent my apologies for that meeting on the 15th.
Councillor Hogben.
For.
Councillor Jeffrey.
For.
Councillor Morton.
Not voting.
Councillor Redstone.
Not voting.
Councillor Weatherall.
Not voting, Chairman. I had to leave the meeting before it finalised.
Okay. Councillor Williams.
For.
Thank you very much. I too will not be voting because I wasn't present for the entirety of that meeting. So that is carried. Thank you very much. Item 4, public speaking. This sets out the public speaking rules of this committee. So just so you know, I've already referred to those. We will call public speakers in the order that they're listed, and they will be asked to keep to the times that they are provided. I do note that there are a number of speakers listed on both item 5 and item 6, the same names listed. Might I suggest that when you come to speak on item 6, you might not necessarily wish to repeat things you have raised regarding item 5. I think it is reasonable to assume that members of the committee will have heard those points, unless there is a break in communication, in which case I will advise you before you begin speaking. So we will now move to the first item for consideration, and that is item number 5, planning application number 19/3097M Mother. Reserve matters application for the erection of 134 dwellings, vehicular access, roads and footways, hard and soft landscaping, drainage and other associated works following outline approval 17/4277M. Land between Chelford Road and Worley Road, Henbury, for Mr. Matthew Shipman, Bellway Homes Limited, brackets, Manchester Division, close brackets. And I will now ask Mr. Rob Law to present the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I can see and hear you.
Just through you, Chair, can you...
I can see your screen, but it's the one with all the icons on at the moment. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, can you see that, Chair?
I can see that, yes. So if you want to start the presentation, that should work.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Good morning, members. Good morning, Chair. Just to confirm, this is a reserve matters application, and it is the detailed matters which must be considered by members today. Just to confirm, those are landscaping, layout, scale and appearance. It's not the purpose of this application to reconsider or revisit the impacts that the proposal would have on the highway network or air quality.
Mr. Law, before you go any further, we are not seeing the presentation, we are seeing your computer screen.
Apologies, bear with me.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey, for raising that with me. I hadn't picked it up because I was checking something paper-wise.
Yes. Chair,
we can now see the presentation. We've got 3 slides, the front slide, and then that's it. Right, we're at the beginning. Thank you very much.
My apologies. Right, I will begin again. This is a reserve matters application, and it's the detailed reserve matters which must be assessed by members today. Those are matters relating to landscaping, layout, scale and appearance. It's not the purpose of this application to reconsider or revisit the impacts that the proposal will have on the highway network or matters relating to air quality. That's because these impacts have already been assessed cumulatively with other applications, and the mitigation for those impacts has already been secured as part of the outline schemes. So in terms of the location of the site, this application relates to a greenfield site lying to the west of Macclesfield, just to the west of Broken Cross in the parish of Henbury. It sits to the north of Chelford Road, along here, and to the southwest of Worley Road here. And it measures approximately 5 hectares in size, and it's positioned to the rear of existing residential properties to Worley Road here and Chelford Road here. The access detail was secured at outline stage, and that secured a vehicular access from Chelford Road in through this gap here. So in terms of context, the site forms part of an allocation for housing within the local plan under policy LPS 18, and that allocated the site here for around 150 houses. Now, it's just important to note that this application before members now only relates to part of the allocation. running along here and here. Just for members' clarity, the second item for consideration on the agenda, item number 6, relates to this parcel of land here, fronting Worley Road. And also, just to clarify, in the context of the area, there's also a larger allocation to the south of Chelford Road, allocated for housing under LPS 16, and that was allocated for around 200 houses. The council is currently considering a scheme for around 230 houses on that site. So that's just to give members a picture of what's going on within the vicinity of the site. So in terms of the aerial image, the site is located here. This is where the access will come in, just adjacent to the Cock Inn pub. Come into the site. The boundary runs along here and up to this corner and across and down. And as you can see, greenfield site. It was originally in the green belt, but has now been removed as part of the allocation. The green belt resides to the west here. And just in terms of this aerial image, it serves a useful purpose in terms of showing that there are surface water issues which stretch into the site in the northwest corner. So the site does suffer from surface water drainage issues, and also partly within the southern corner of the site here as well. So in terms of the detailed design that members are considering today, the secured vehicular access, which has already been approved here, would feed a primary road with a number of tertiary roads off it, secondary routes. Now, these roads, as you travel in through the site, will be characterised by different character areas. So you'll see here there's a square, an area of mews, and the roads themselves will be characterised by here on entry a tree-lined avenue, and then moving further towards the north of the site, a woodland kind of character area, and then further into the site in this direction, lanes character areas. So there have been various negotiations with the applicant to secure a better quality design, and that has taken place. So the scheme has been subject to a number of amendments to basically improve the design to a point where officers are now satisfied with the standard of design and its compliance with the Cheshire East Design Guide. Now, also important to note that one of the site-specific principles of the site allocation was that an appropriate green buffer would be secured with the green belt that will be left to the west, and that is secured in this detailed layout through the provision of public open space. Furthermore, within the middle of the site at the moment, there was a community woodland planting area. Now, this loss has already been accepted at outline stage, but what we have as part of the proposal is mitigation planting in this area, and I'll be able to show you that in some slides in a minute. So in terms of the open space area and the woodland planting that I've just referenced, that would be adjacent to an existing, a proposed area of open space here, and would also include a locally equipped area of play on site here. Again, that was secured at outline stage, but we have further detail of the position of it here, and this is the mitigation planting, which would serve to provide a decent buffer with the boundary to the west. Now, in terms of that surface water issue in the northwestern corner that I just touched upon earlier, there will be there has been a detailed drainage design submitted, include attenuation tanks, a pond here, and also some land drains along the western boundary running into an existing culvert, and those have been subject to scrutiny by the council's flood risk officer and also United Utilities, and we are satisfied that the surface water issues experienced on the site can be ratified through the design that's put forward. Also worth noting, there's a sewer that runs across the site along here, and one of the site-specific principles of the allocation is that has to be respected. So it's just to confirm that that is, so there are no buildings shown over that sewer which runs along here. So just to give members a flavour of the design of the units, again, these have been subject to amendment to improve their quality. So this is an example of one of the 4-bed units, which would be a corner turner on one of the corner plots. So well articulated with some design detail, and on the end gable, fenestration that would overlook the spaces that they would address to provide good passive surveillance and to help views to terminate on active frontages. Again, another unit. This unit, it's just important to note in terms of the scheme itself. It is reduced in size in terms of that shown outline. And that is to accommodate the second item on the agenda, item number 6. So the outline scheme did include the land that is proposed under item number 6, but now it's been condensed down to provide these units that are before members today, 134. And that is on the basis of the unit types. The mix has been reduced in terms of the size. So what we've got is we've got a range of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bed. So there's no 5 beds. And also in terms of the general spread and general mix, there's a large proportion of 3 beds. And even the 4 beds are on the smaller side in terms of, and what that's done is that's allowed the developer to provide more units, but they're actually smaller units. We as officers are satisfied with the mix and density of that. And in terms of the indicative layout that was shown at outline, the proposal before members today does not deviate significantly from that. So the scale and design and density is deemed to be acceptable by officers. Again, another 3-bed unit. You can see a nice modest size. Again, this is a corner turner, and this will address the woodland, one of the woodland character areas. It's almost got a cottage style to it, so well designed. And then one of the larger properties, to give you an indication, this again is a corner turner, and it's characterised one of the character areas which would form the avenue on entry to the main development. And what this would do, it's a bit taller, so it would frame entry to the avenue and provide a bit more verticality in terms of variation and height. And then again, the other end of the spectrum in terms of size, some really modest 2-bedroom mews properties, which would again provide the lower end of property on the site. And then again, this is just to demonstrate that the 4-bed units, whilst there are quite a few 4-bed units, they're quite small in terms of the size as well. So providing a nice range of properties. So street scenes, just to give members an indication of how those units would translate into the development. You can see nice variation here, frontages broken up, and these corner turners framing the various corners where they are. Tree-lined approach along the avenue, so there'll be frontage trees, which over time, as they mature, will provide an attractive avenue to the development. So whilst the site access has already been approved, I've just put this in just to show members what was secured at outline stage. That vehicular access directly opposite the Cockham public house. There will be some car parking retained for the Cock-Inn on this side. And as you can see, a ghost right turn lane has been secured off the carriageway along Chelford Road with some realignment. So that was acceptable at outline stage, but that is how the development will be served. So this is just to give members an indication of how the site is. That is the access I've just shown you into the site off Chelford Road, and the right turn ghost island will go in here. Again, there'd be a bit of realignment, and there'd be 2 units on here on entry to frame the development leading into it. And then moving further into the site off of that access, this is a photograph taken looking north. And as you can see in the distance, these are the properties that currently front Worley Road, and this is the western boundary to the Greenbelt. Here you'll see just in the distance, here, a gap with Worley Road, and that is where the gap will be filled in by the second item number 6, that is for consideration by members today as well. This is taken from the same position, but looking further towards the east, towards the eastern boundary here, and again, you can just see the properties fronting Worley Road here, and that gap I've just described here. Behind this building here is the north western corner, and you will see some of the community planting that we have accepted the loss of, which would be mitigated on this side as part of the proposed layout. And then this is looking just a bit further east. Again, eastern boundary here. This is the rear boundary to the properties along Chelford Road, backing onto the site. And then moving further into the site, this is taken from the corner near to Worley Road, where it adjoins the item number 6 on the agenda. But this is looking towards the northwestern corner, where that surface water pooling has been known to exist on the site. This is here. You'll see a little post and wire fence along the boundary. That is the western boundary to the site. So again, this is the area that experiences those surface water issues. And then this is the view looking south and east from Worley Road into the site. You see this will be retained as part of the proposals. That's just looking south and east. So for members today, just to clarify, the principle of residential development has already been established through the outline consent and also the allocation of the site within the local plan. The proposed development seeks to provide a residential development of 134 units. This submission relates to the details of scale, layout, appearance and landscaping, as the details of access were determined at outline stage. The proposal provides the required amount of affordable housing with appropriate mix and density, and the design is acceptable as amended also. The risk of drainage and flooding would be mitigated by detailed drainage solutions. As such, the proposal is sustainable development. It's acceptable in all other regards, and it's recommended for approval as per page 30 on the agenda reports pack. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chairman, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'll get used to this. I will now move, thank you, Mr. Law. I will now move to the public speaking section, and I will call upon the Ward Councillor, Councillor Leslie Smethon, to address the board. Councillor Smethon, can you please turn on your camera and microphone?
Thank you, Chairman. Ladies
You
and
have
gentlemen,
5 minutes. I can see and hear you. You have 5 minutes speaking time, and when you have finished, you may be asked questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen committee, I'm representing Henbury Parish and residents of Goresworth Ward today. You will have seen their well-researched and comprehensive representation on the planning portal. The parish believes that there are many reasons why this application should not be approved, but I do need to refer to some general issues. There are a total of 4 applications outstanding for determination at the same location on both sides of the A537 Chelford Road on the outskirts of Macclesfield. The land for all 4 applications was released, as said, from the Greenbelt following approval of the local plan in 2017. However, it is disappointing to see proposals for a greater number of properties than originally envisaged in the local plan. The increase in properties and associated infrastructure results in an apparently cramped development that would change the ambience of the area, the rural gateway scene to Macclesfield, and the way of life for residents in Henbury and Macclesfield. The officer has referred to compliance with our design guide, but it does seem a very cramped development here, and I would like to query whether the room sizes and spaces for individual properties and layout are suitable. Plans do not appear to show that they are. Environmental thinking and approaches have changed a great deal in recent years. Ecological concerns and mitigation are increasingly important. The land is peat, important for providing carbon sequestration. Should such land be built on in this way? Great crested newts are subject to protection and are often relocated. And I would like to see evidence available that confirms that relocation is successful. Conditions are suggested to prevent future removal of hedgehog highways in property boundaries. How would that be enforced? A community planted stand of trees initially promised to be retained would be destroyed by this development. Hedgerows and other environmental benefits should not be destroyed without net gain. Cheshire Wildlife Trust say that there is not an appropriate amount of net gain of biodiversity in the plans. There has been a great deal of flooding recently, as referred to. Fields between Macclesfield and Henbury have been heavily impacted and gardens flooded, and fears are for water ingress into homes that have been reported to me. Proposals for water management could have a detrimental impact upon nearby protected Cockwood. Increases in the built environment will just exacerbate these matters. Henbury Parish Council are so concerned by the possibility of more flooding that they commissioned a flood risk assessment included in documentation on the portal. And a short referral to the road. In usual times, they are congested, dangerous and polluted, and the Broken Cross roundabout improvement proposals seem to have disappeared. Access to the developments could be more efficiently designed to reduce congestion, danger and already known poor air quality. More homes will increase these highway problems in the area, and turning in front of oncoming traffic, even if there is a new lane, isn't at all ideal. Schools, hospitals and care facilities in the area will be increasingly squeezed, and our existing residents would be heavily impacted by these proposals in Henbury, Broken Cross and Upton, Western Ivy and further afield. We know that housing is needed, however, but it is also clear to Henbury that there are just too many issues to ignore. This application should be refused. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Councillor Smetham? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Smetham. It was stressed at the outset that this is a reserved matters application, which is, obviously we look at the issues of design, layout, those sorts of things. It doesn't appear to be before this committee to actually push for a withdrawal of planning permission. on this site. It is there in the local plan. If I were to ask you, though, to sort of put perhaps three key priority issues of concern that this committee could maybe look to perhaps mitigate if it's minded to approve, what would those big, the main issues be from your point of view?
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Are you referring to the big picture or to the landscaping and other items in front of you today?
Well, yeah, we've been asked not to look at the big picture. We're being asked to look at the landscaping and other items. So much as it would be great to look at the big picture, I don't think that's the option that we've got in front of us. So, you know, the issue is, as far as I can tell from the protocols and things we're looking at forms of mitigation, perhaps.
Well, I think that the biodiversity issue that's been raised in terms of net gain could be addressed perhaps better. There is also the flooding issue and the community trees. I think it's very sad to destroy community planted trees, and they are the three that come to the top of my head without just studying the papers a little bit further, if that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. Is it all right if I come back?
Yes.
Yeah. The community trees aspect, there is in the proposal we have before us, there is details there about mitigating that by additional planting. Do you feel that those are satisfactory or unsatisfactory? Bit of a leading question, I know, but there we are.
Yes, without a site visit, it's a little difficult for members to see where these the existing trees are and where the new planting would be. I think it's the concept really of a community planted little woodland, small woodland, that's the issue.
Okay, yeah, that clarifies things. Thanks very much, Councillor Smetham.
Okay, Councillor Farrell wishes to ask you a question. Councillor Farrell.
Thanks, Chair. Hello, Councillor Smetham. I just wanted to, obviously, kind of following on from what Councillor Williams just asked you. Obviously, this outline approval for this planning application was actually granted in 2018, and we're considering the reserve matters now before us. But you did mention the air quality, and in the outline application, when it was approved, modelling was in the conditions to take place in 2020. Obviously, no one could foresee what's happening in 2020. Do you think, therefore, that 2020 for modelling on traffic data has been representative of previous years?
Not being an expert on air quality, that is a difficult question for me to answer. However, I do know that as we progress through these increasing numbers of applications that are going to be coming all across the swathe of southwest Macclesfield, right through on a new link road eventually from the Chelford Road to the Congleton Road and even further to the Leek Road. These can't help but get worse unless possibly there are non-polluting vehicles on the roads. That's rather a big picture to think about for the future, but at present I can't see any possibility of any reduction in air quality at all. I hope that answers what you asked. I'm not quite sure if it did.
Thank you, Councillor Smetham. Also, while I'm on, in regards to that, because I do suspect that other speakers will bring up the issue of air quality as you have. Could we get some clarification from the officers in regards to the
can you ask that question, Councillor Farrell? Can you ask that question of the officers, not of Councillor Smetham, please?
Yeah, I am doing now.
Yeah, oh, yeah, no, but at the appropriate part of the meeting.
I'm just only as I suspect other speakers will be asking the same question, and I want them therefore use their time as efficiently and
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Have you finished your questions to Councillor Smetham? That's it. Thank you. There are no other questioners. In that case, please can I thank Councillor Smetham for her time, and I am now going to call the neighbouring ward, Councillor James Barber, the ward councillor, to address the board. And you also have 5 minutes. If you could switch your camera and microphone on, please, Councillor Barber.
There you go. Can you see me, Chair?
At the moment, no, but that could just be a delay. Hold on a second.
I can see, Chairman.
That's fine. That's okay, as long as you can be seen. So you have 5 minutes, and please address the meeting now, Councillor Barber.
Thank you very much, Chair and committee, for having me here today. I firstly want to note, obviously, that as Councillor Farrell alluded to, a lot of the issues that were raised by Councillor Smetham, the previous speaker, are very much duplicated in my ward, Broken Cross and Upton, which is obviously neighbouring to her ward of Goresworth. So, obviously, with the Chelford Road development finally being back, a lot has changed, but also so little has changed at the same time. And I note that it's been said mitigation for the issues such as highways, air quality, etc., that myself and other speakers will be raising has been found. But personally, myself and my residents who I've consulted on the issue remain unsatisfied. And in the grand scheme of things, the bigger picture is relevant in these proposals in front of you today. So, as I say, having listened to my residents on this, I don't know a single person who approves of these plans locally. Henbury Parish Council, as repeated by Councillor Smetham, have raised comprehensive objections to this application at every stage, and none of the issues have been really addressed. Surely local knowledge should triumph here. So the first of my objections does surround the issue of flooding. If you've ever visited the fields on which these houses will be built on, you'd be thinking, why would you want to build houses here? When it rains, it isn't just a stream, you've practically got a huge lake. The land is, as Mr. Law said, susceptible to surface water flooding, and it's simply not fit for the housing to be built on. I, for one, wouldn't want to be living in a house on this land. And as I say, I welcome the acknowledgement from Mr. Law that there are surface water issues, and I really want to emphasise the severity of the issue. Linking to this, the development will inevitably see the removal of mass peat, which not only is not in line with government guidelines, but also will have a devastating impact on the local environment. As this council declared a climate emergency in 2019, we have a responsibility to do everything we can to not just protect the local environment, but to enhance it. Personally, I think constructing 134 houses on a field where there is a varied ecological climate, with lots of animal habitats that will be destroyed, trees cut down and peat removed, that's not going to be of any benefit to the environment at all. And on the flooding as well, Henbury Parish Council commissioned a flood report that raised a number of serious issues that personally I don't think have been addressed properly. In terms of the design of the dwellings themselves, I find myself disappointed in the exercise in cramming that has taken place, presumably to ensure that there is obviously maximum profitability from the scheme. And this has led to reduced plot sizes, as we've already heard, that has compromised on quality to ensure quantity. And an issue that many residents have is that the designs don't fit with the design of houses in the local area, and they will look out of place. Moving on, as champion for young people, I have a duty to represent the interests of young people and the services supporting them. And this planning application will have a hugely detrimental effect to our young people in Macclesfield and the surrounding areas. Schools are already oversubscribed, an issue that hasn't been addressed. Healthcare services are overrun and stretched to their limits even before COVID, and children are going to be expected to walk to school through an already dangerous air quality management area that will inevitably get worse. And this leads me onto the important issue of air pollution and traffic. Broken Cross is already an area where air pollution is a major concern, and this development will add potentially hundreds of new cars to the local area, making the local air quality even more unsafe. Furthermore, traffic issues in the area are still of major concern. Pre-COVID, the traffic was stretching back down Chester Road for miles at peak times, and when you're adding in a ton of new cars, that's obviously going to get worse, and the local traffic system will collapse. Whilst not contained within these plans before you today, it's also relevant to note the outstanding issue of condition 6 that the developers want to remove based on data that they collected last year during lockdown conditions, when the volume of cars will of course be lower than normal. When the first lockdown ended, I did my own traffic surveys at 4 Lane End near New King's School and also at Broken Cross at peak times with schools children being picked up, and the conditions were unbearable, as you would anticipate. Until this issue has properly been addressed, these plans should not really be voted through, and even if you aren't managed to outright reject them.
Okay, can you finish up?
I'll follow up, yeah. So, with this being such a massively discussed and important development in Macclesfield's recent history, I would ask that you think about the residents and think about what is best for Macclesfield here, and either reject the plans or at the very least defer them. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
That's okay. Thank you very much, Kat. Are there any questions for Councillor Barber, please? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Barber. I'll be asking some technical questions to the officers about the flooding and the peat issue. And I know you're not an expert, neither am I, but in terms of the flooding, I like you used the phrase several times about in your opinion, and it does seem that there is a excessive, to my mind, amount of surface water here, and the peat issue is very troubling too. However, I just be interested in what your view to a solution of that might be as a layperson, obviously, but what do you feel about the plans that are in the documents here about mitigating the flood issue? How satisfactory do you feel they are?
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I mean, as you say, I'm not an expert on those technical issues, but what I would say is if you visit the field, for example, obviously we've had recent flooding issues across the country, and when I was sent pictures, I've been in self-isolation, so I've not been able to visit myself, but I've been sent pictures and videos of the field in recent weeks where it was effectively most of the field was a lake, and it was quite a deep one at that. So it would take a lot more than I think that is already in these plans to really satisfactorily address that issue, personally.
Okay, thanks. That answers the question. Thanks very much.
Okay, right. I have Councillors Farrell, Jeffrey and Hogburn are wishing to ask questions. I will call them in that order. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Councillor Barber, for all the points you raised. My questions are just in regards to the points for the reserve matters. You mentioned the ecological impact. Do you think, having read through the report agenda pack and the reports back, that the ecological mitigation is not sufficient, or is sufficient, or is any sort of ideas on what we could do to improve those, and any additional conditions that you'd like to suggest?
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. I think going back to a previous point that's been made, it's really, we've seen through, for example, Henbury Parish Council, there's been a lot of work done with planting trees in the local area. So I know that there were a number of trees planted by local school children, for example, that will, as part of this scheme, be removed. And I think, as I say, as we've declared a climate emergency, the plans at the moment do not mitigate the issues to the extent of there is still going to be a loss of that ecological biodiversity element of it all. And as it stands, I don't think these plans really address that. It's sort of, we're removing a lot of trees, we're removing the animal habitats, we're removing, your elements of biodiversity, and they're being replaced slightly, but not, there's still that loss that is going to be really damaging to the local environment.
Thank you. And also, just to follow up on another question, you mentioned the design of the proposed development, the build houses. Could you, obviously, I'm local to the area, but for the other, for everyone else on board, could you briefly just describe what the houses, the surrounding houses in the local area look like in comparison to the proposed designs?
Yeah, of course. So obviously on Worley Road specifically, first of all, there's obviously you've got your newer housing estate with Jasmine Avenue, but then the bit that will be on the side overlooking the field is more of a mixture of older houses that these new modern houses that are in the plans that we're seeing at the moment are not of the same style really that would make the area integrate into the area as such. Then going along Telford Road again, they're quite older houses with a lot of more, as I say, older features that they just the new development would look quite out of place. I think it's fair to say.
In regards to older features, have you got like do you describe for us a particular like period or scale of the houses? Are they all, are they a mix of bungalows or two-story houses, or what? Can you give us a more of a brief description of those?
So I mean, I can't give you a time period because I wouldn't have the first idea of what time period some of these houses are designed on, but there's a few bungalows as you go along Chelford Road, and they are like, there's one which is one of my personal favourites to go and deliver a leaflet to back in normal times, where it's a massive orchard in front of it, and then it's a nice little bungalow it's like white brick, and there's a lot more varied along Chelford Road itself with like your white brick buildings, stuff like that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Barber. 3 questions, I think. On the flooding issues, with your local knowledge, are you aware of any incoming water from there? Because what I'm reading is that's surface water, and to my mind, having that built up with appropriate drainage coming from the gutterings, that surface water will disappear, so it will actually improve the flooding issues on that land. And I think that's the argument that they're making in the documentation. So I'm just wondering, are you aware of any rivers or streams feeding that surface water, which would undermine that argument? Secondly, you asked us to refuse, or at the very least defer. I'm just wondering, on what grounds would you like us to defer? Bearing in mind this is a reserved matter, so the bigger picture stuff, as we were talking to Councillor Smetham about, that's kind of gone. We cannot refuse on the grounds that we don't want development on this land. So on what grounds would you like us to defer? So what information do you want us to get to make a decision later, that sort of thing? And thirdly, on the... No, it's okay. That'll do.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Barber, would you like to answer those questions, please?
Yeah, cool. So thank you very much, Councillor Jeffrey. So in terms of the flooding, obviously, there is some permanent streams that go along the field. When I did my own sort of survey of the area with Councillor Vernon, who's my fellow ward councillor for the area, we came across a number of permanent streams that are there that go across and then lead into the where the surface water flooding issues are. And in terms of, I mean, it's quite a common dog walking route, for example, and also there's a path that leads from Worley Road to Henbury, which is obviously in Goresworth Ward, and it's actually quite a nice walk. And I know you've obviously said the flooding issues we've sorted. A lot of people don't necessarily mind the fact that there's obviously that varied sort of ecological, because you then get a lot more of a biodiversity area where you've got the lake and you'll have birds nesting around the area. So that's not an issue that necessarily is wanted to be fixed in regards to that, if you get what I mean. It is a very pleasant area to walk through, and if you're building houses on it, obviously then it's an issue that needs to be fixed, because otherwise it effectively you'd need a boat, not a house in the area, really. So I don't feel that the plans that have been put forward would fully address the issues. And onto your second question, in terms of a deferral, one of the main issues that has come up recently is, as I say in my speech, the removal of condition 6, which is surrounding the Broken Cross roundabout. Now, obviously, with that being an outstanding issue, I have quite a lot of concerns surrounding the traffic element of it all, and until that's been properly resolved, I have real grave concerns, because, as I say, the traffic issue is bad as it is. When you've still got that outstanding issue of not exactly knowing what's going to happen at Broken Cross roundabout, with the developer asking to remove condition 6, which would obviously see more work being done, I find that to be quite concerning. And until that has been properly sorted and addressed, I would be quite cautious about, obviously, just voting through these plans as they are right now.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Hogben.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 or 3 questions. There's a question about flooding. Is this a case of you have to see it to believe it? That's probably a simple question. And I suppose linked with it, do you think, as a local member, that it would be beneficial for members of the Strategic Planning Board actually to be able to visit the site? Bearing in mind all the restrictions, of course, that we face at the moment. I don't want to be arrested on the way to Macclesfield, plainly. Is that a consideration? And the other one is something that you actually touched on. You mentioned that traffic is, under normal circumstances, traffic is that busy that it could very likely endanger children and young people on the way to school. Now, from your local knowledge, what sort of, well, first of all, where would the children go to school, do you think? And secondly, what would be a safe route for them to take, particularly if they were walking?
Thank you.
Those are relevant issues,
yeah,
which link in obviously with the traffic matters. Thank you.
So going back to your first question, obviously, I think, as you say, if you visit the field when the issues are there, you would be thinking, as I said previously, it's not a house you need, it's a boat. It's not just like a stream, it is a full-on lake. People know it as Lake Chelford Road. It's a real issue. Obviously, as you say, the restrictions in place currently do obviously mean it's quite difficult for site visits, I would assume, to go ahead. I believe that, I mean, a lot of the work that Henbury Parish Council have done has been published. Obviously, the flooding report that they commissioned is on the planning portal, so there is stuff out there. But I completely take your point that obviously, unless you've seen it in person, you might not truly believe the scale of the issue, because obviously seeing a report on paper will paint a picture, but when you actually see it in person, you would be quite shocked, I think it's fair to say. On the second question, so in the local area, you've got Worley Primary School, you've got Broken Cross Primary School, you've also got Fallabroom, which is the big high school, which is just down the road. So there's quite a lot of schools in the area. There's also All Hallows Catholic College, which is another big high school, which you would have to walk down Chester Road. So if you're living in these new houses, you would have to walk through the air quality management area at Broken Cross, where traffic air pollution levels have been previously deemed to be at unlawful levels. if you're adding in obviously these potentially hundreds of cars, those previously unlawful levels are going to go back up to being quite serious, which is obviously going to put the health of young people at risk. And with, obviously, as I said in my speech, health services being stretched to capacity as it is, you're looking at real issues surrounding the health of our young people, on that, even just if it's on their daily walk to and from school. That's 5 days a week when they're back at school, where they're walking through this quite dangerous air polluted area. So it is of quite a lot of concern to me when I'm obviously, as champion for young people, representing the young people's interests.
Yeah, so yes, there is that. So the question that will remain, I'll ask it later, I'm sure, will be about this interesting question of safe walking routes to school, and as well as school transport. But that's not something that you raised. But I'll probably come to that later if I get the chance. Thank you very much, Councillor Barber.
Okay, there are no further questions. Councillor Barber, I believe this is your first appearance before the Strategic Planning Board. Can I just say that?
Actually.
Sorry?
It's my third. Actually,
oh, is it? Sorry, I obviously was absent from the ones that you were speaking at previously. So
no,
you've done very well. You clearly very well prepared. So thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank
you
you.
Now can turn your camera and your microphone off and continue to listen to the remainder of the debate.
Thank you.
Members of the public, members of the board, you will recall that I said I was going to hold a minute's silence at or around 11 o'clock. I felt it was appropriate that Councillor Barber should not have to sit while we held silence, waiting to hear what the next questions were. So I wanted to have the questions finished first. So I now intend to hold a minute's silence in honour of all those who lost their lives as a result of the Holocaust.
One minute, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And as an aside, thank you very much for joining me in holding that commemoration. Any of you who may wish to, I understand that nationally this evening we're being asked to light a candle in our windows at 8 p.m. this evening. So if anybody wishes to join that national commemoration, please do so. So I'm now going to call upon Councillor Nick Mannion, the member for the neighbouring ward, to address the board. And Councillor Mannion, if you could possibly turn on your camera and your microphone, please, so we can see that you are available.
Yes, Chairman. Can you see and hear me?
I can see and hear you. You are in a very snowy location this morning, I can see.
That's the Japanese garden at Tatton Park.
Okay, thank you very much. If you would like to address the meeting, as a neighbouring councillor, you only have 3 minutes to address, and you may be asked questions afterwards. So the floor is yours, Councillor Mannion.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to speak this morning on application 19/3097M as the neighbouring ward member. And I must say, if ever there's an overwhelming argument for a site visit by the board, this would have been one. Anyway, I'll get straight to the point, in that I asked the board to at least defer this application at your meeting today, if you're not minded to deal with it and dispose of the matter. My reason for urging you to give serious consideration to deferring the application is what I would call the elephant in the room. That is buried on page 13 of your agenda today, which notes that there is also an application 20/5442 currently under consideration. This application has major ramifications relating to off-site highway works at Broughton Cross, which is in my ward, and therefore the reason why I'm speaking today. So whilst the two applications are indeed, as the case officer Mr. Law stated, quite separate, they do share key features, and therefore they should be dealt with by the board at the same meeting. This approach will be consistent with that taken previously by the board when considering the outline applications for this and the two adjoining sites, all of which have been removed from the Greenbelt by the local plan, in that they were dealt with together at the same meeting at Macclesfield Town Hall, and this ensured that the board considered them in the round rather than in a piecemeal way, separated by time and distance. I'll not duplicate the concerns raised by other speakers this morning about the unsuitability of this site going forward, but instead focus upon issues that will impact upon residents of my ward. The report accepts the site is next to the Broughton Cross Air Quality Management Area, where since my election in May 2015, air pollution levels have been persistently unlawfully, and I stress the word unlawfully high, and there has been no work whatsoever carried out to date to reduce it to a lawful level. As Councillor Barber mentioned, several hundred school children cross through this air quality management area each day already, to and from my ward, between home and school. I now refer you to the comments on the report at page 11, which asks you to accept that traffic generated by another 135 properties, plus possibly the 23 in your next agenda item, and I quote from the report, will not have a detrimental impact on the local highway network, and the impact on local air quality will be acceptable. So, pushing up already unlawful levels of air pollution even higher is acceptable in planning terms. So where is the tipping point when level? Finally, I turn to an issue on bus services. The number of bus journeys passing this site has declined by around 40% between the granting of the outline permission and the month immediately prior to the declaration of the pandemic in February 2020. Thank you.
Okay,
Therefore,
thank you.
I ask the board to refuse this application, or at least defer a decision until you have the opportunity to consider it alongside application 20/5442 to scrutinise the details of mitigation measures regarding pollution and highways issues. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mannion. Councillor Mannion, there do not appear to be any people asking you questions, but there's always one latecomer. Councillor Hogben. Councillor Hogben, the floor is yours to ask a question.
Yes, I'm moving from one screen to another. It's all a bit difficult for an old fellow like me, so you have to be patient with me. Yes, that interesting last comment there from you, Councillor Mannion, about reduction in bus services. Could you tell me, and it's following up a question I asked a little bit earlier to Councillor Barber, what sort of services have been cut? Are there the sort of bus services that, for example, children and young people may have used to go to school, particularly those who technically could walk to school, for example? Because we've all been very concerned in the past about safer routes to schools, and this is a case in point. I mean, nobody's can debate the fact of heavy traffic levels on this.
Yeah.
Heavy traffic levels on this particular approach road into Macclesfield. But those bus services, from your knowledge, were they used very much by children and young people, as well as, of course, people travelling into Macclesfield? And I see that the report states it's only 2.4 or something kilometres into town, which is mile and a half, a couple of miles, that sort of distance. But it's all main road access to the town centre. That's I think my main question. Yes.
Yeah, there are basically 3 bus services that serve the site. Along Worley Road, you get the 19 service to Presbury, and along the main Telford Road, you have the 88 service and the 130. All of these services, when the original application was when the outline application, so to say, was determined, were hourly from, I'd say, around 7:30 in the morning, and certainly the 1:30 into the early evening. By February last year, they'd been severely pruned. Indeed, the 88 was 2 hourly with no connecting service back out of town at around school finishing times, and the council had to step in to rescue the 1:30 service when the commercial operator gave notice to withdraw it. And again, there was no specific timing to fit in with school services. Indeed, the routes those services currently take do not pass the local high schools Councillor Barber made reference to with regard to Fallybroom School and All Hallows High School, which between them, I would say, have around 3,000 plus pupils. And this area is squarely within the catchment area. So I would say there is a considerable, taking the bus to school, and it is slightly speculative because we don't know what the post-pandemic situation will be, but certainly by February last year was becoming increasingly an unviable option for getting to school.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Mannion.
Councillor Mannion, Councillor Farrell wishes to ask you a question, but before I call him, it's been brought to my attention that while you were speaking, your screen froze for a short period when you were talking about traffic. So unconventionally, I'm going to ask you if you could potentially reread that so we can all hear what you intended to say.
I'll just have to find my speech again in extra large font, if you just bear with me. Yeah. Well, it is hard when you're trying to write traffic. Let me find it. Apologies if I start a little bit earlier. Right. Okay. Right, I'll start from this paragraph, if it's any help. The report accepts that the site is next to the Broughton Cross Area Quality Management Area, which since my election in 2015, air pollutions have continued to be persistently unlawfully high, and there's been no work carried out to date to reduce the pollution to lawful levels. Several hundred school children cross through the air quality management area each day from my ward to and from school and home. I refer the board to the comments in the report at page 11, which asks you to accept that traffic generated by another 135 properties, plus possibly 23 in your next agenda item, will, and I quote directly from the report, will not have a detrimental impact on the local highway network, and the impact on local air quality will be acceptable also. So by pushing up already unlawfully high levels of air pollution even higher, is this acceptable in planning terms? Where is the tipping point when levels are already unlawfully high? And then I went on to talk about bus services, so it's presumably when the screen unfroze. Is that okay, Chairman?
That's fine. Councillor Farrell now wishes to ask you a question. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually quite helpful, Councillor Mannion. Just repeated that bit because that's not on my question really. Thank you, Councillor Mannion. You obviously in that bit of your speech you do mention unlawful levels of air pollution a few times through, you think, and this is obviously a concern. Can you elaborate on that for us and let us know whether that was known at the time of the outline planning permission in 2018?
What I can say is Broughton Cross was an air quality management area prior to that application being submitted, so it would have been known. I haven't got the report in front of me. I'm making the assumption on the professionalism of the officers that it would have been alluded to, and the fact that it was an air quality management area because the levels of air pollution were consistently unlawful, and I keep stressing the word unlawful. It's in breach of legal maximums, and we've all seen recently the tragic legal action of the young child in London, where unlawfully high levels of air pollution contributed to her death. It's an issue that's of major concern to many families in my ward, and they ask the question, when, what are we going to do about it, and when's it going to be done? And I really think before you make a decision on this matter, you actually have the reassurance that the mitigation measures proposed are going to reduce the air pollution level to lawful levels at Broughton Cross. Because I can't see how an extra 160 properties is not going to have anything other than and exacerbate the current situation and make it worse. So I think it is really relevant, and that is why I asked you to defer it.
Okay.
Because the other application I make reference to relates to the highway issues, and I think you need to consider those alongside each other.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mannion. Councillor Farrell, is that all, or do you wish to come back?
No, that's great. I'll also ask that question to the office.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Mannion. If you could please return to your snowy scene.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the board.
If we can now, I can now call Parish Councillor Simon Brown, representing Henbury Parish Council, to address the board. Mr. Brown, Councillor Brown, can you please turn on your screen and your camera?
Morning. I hope you can hear me and see me.
Yes, Councillor Brown, you are sharing your time with another speaker. So if I can ask, you have 2.5 minutes, and when you have finished, there may be questions.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. Henbury Parish Council has submitted our serious concerns and detailed objections to this application.
Excuse me, before you carry on, and I will ask Sarah to stop, can I just ask, the screensaver that you is behind you, does that relate to the site?
That's the community Woodland.
Right, can I ask you to delete it, please, because you can't, you're not allowed to share pictorial information in this section. Otherwise,
okay.
we would be finding ourselves, if I can ask you to delete that and then start your
okay, I will do. Hopefully, you can see something different now.
Yeah, that's different.
All right. Apologies for that.
If you can start again, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, apologies. I didn't realise I hadn't seen any constraints in terms of background. So, yeah. So, thank you for the opportunity again. Henbury Parish Council has submitted our serious concerns and detailed objections to this application. This and adjacent proposed developments represent a major change in the local environment and a large reduction in green gap between Macclesfield and Henbury. With limited time, I'll focus on several environmental matters. The development will cause significant biodiversity loss, with extensive peat deposits and marshland being removed, and the planned bulldozing of nearly 500 trees planted by Henbury Parish Council, residents and school children in 2013. These trees were shown as retained prior to local plan adoption, but then removed from submission once the site was accepted, with only very small scale mitigation. This sets a very poor example, especially when there is now a national focus on tree planting, and we understand its benefit in mitigating climate change, pollution and flooding. Will CEC really allow this to happen? In some areas, the site is very wet and experiences persistent flooding, sometimes covering wide areas. Surface water runoff is to be directed directly to the Cockwood Ancient Woodland Local Wildlife Site, with calculated flow rates that are incorrect since the catchment shown in the submission is incomplete. How will the resulting pollution in the watercourse affect the ancient woodland and the environmentally sensitive land and ponds downstream? There's been no published consideration given to this either by the developer or CEC, including in the office's report, despite this being raised as a major concern several times. The development will be dependent on the drainage on adjacent land being in good order, but without ownership, this cannot be guaranteed. As such, there will always be the risk of failure and flooding of the site. Will residents be able to insure their properties in this flood risk area? As the site includes the Long Moss peat bog, a major issue is the presence of large peat volumes, something of great importance for climate change and a well-publicised topic currently. The applicant's geoassessment includes the following statement. The peat encountered was present to a maximum proven depth of 5 metres. However, it is possible that the peat may be present to a greater extent and at depths beyond those investigated. As the peat must be completely removed from all areas of highways, infrastructure and drives, there's a serious risk that it will not be feasible to bury all the excavated peat within the site, and no calculations have been shown on how this will be done, something not mentioned in the officer's report. Also, the natural water storage capacity provided by the peat will be changed on the site due to the redistribution and possible removal. No consideration has been given to this, so the impact is unknown. We therefore argue that for the above reasons and those provided in our detailed submissions, planning approval should be refused or at least deferred until some of these very serious matters are better understood. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Councillor Brown? That's a no, Councillor Brown. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, there. I don't know whether you have an IT problem, but Councillor Redstone would like to ask you a question. Councillor Redstone.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've looked on the website and I cannot find this geo-environmental assessment, nor can I find the remediation and enabling works and piling reports, but I presume from your answer that you've seen these.
Yeah, the geo-assessment, actually you have to go back through the applications. The geo-assessment was actually submitted originally on 174277M, so it's not actually there on 3097. Or
okay,
yeah.
Okay, so that really shouldn't be mentioned in this report as it doesn't relate to this application, presumably.
Well, it's the only geo-assessment data that has been provided by the developer for this application, so it's the only information we have on any ground surveys that have been done. As it's 4277 now, surely it is appropriate because it was part of the application that led to the outline permission being granted, which obviously isn't the outline permission, was granted, and that's been mentioned about the reserve matters. But to me, the outline permission that was given was something different because it was 135 houses across the entire site, including what's given by 3097 and 3098 today, whereas this reserve matters is for 134 on a subset of the site. So it's not actually of the same area. So just another point, but yeah, thanks.
The other, well, really, I suppose the question I've got to ask you is, there's the issue of disposal of the peat. So you're saying that this will not be all disposed of on this site?
No, but I'm not seeing any evidence provided to say that it can be. If you look at the documentation, the geo-assessment says effectively we don't know. You could interpret it saying we have an idea of how much peat there might be, but we don't really know, because the geo-assessment and the surveys they've done haven't been comprehensive enough to fully understand what the site conditions are. And then in the officer's report, it presents it as almost fait accompli that the peat can be buried on the site. Well, there's a whole missing area of calculation and justification that hasn't been done, and it's just taken that this peat can be buried. Well, it's the information says it can be buried in bands of 300 millimeter trenches effectively to a depth of no greater than 1 meter. Well, where are the calculations and where's the evidence to say that it can be done? So in the absence of that, it's a big unknown as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Do you know, will this peat produce sulfites when it dries out?
Sorry,
okay.
It's not something.
That's a question I'm going to have to ask the officer. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
thanks.
Councillor Hogman wishes to ask a question of you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Hogman.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a follow-up on what Councillor Redstone just inquired about. This geo assessment, which was done some time ago. Can you recall exactly when it was done, and whether in fact circumstances may have changed in the meantime? And maybe this is one that the officers may have to answer, I don't know, whether in fact it takes into account the transfer of peat from one part of the site to another and its impact upon the outcomes, whether it's flooding or anything else.
in all the submissions I've looked through, there has been no consideration given to changes in hydrogeology from moving peat across the site. And that's, one of our major concerns is that part of the what will it be, southeast corner of the site has significant peat deposits, and there's an attenuation tank planned in the southeast area. Well, if we're going to excavate a large amount of peat that is quite an efficient absorber of water, take that out, put that somewhere else, and put an attenuation tank in there. How much value does the attenuation tank give you over that amount of peat that's been removed? And I'd challenge you to find anywhere in any documentation associated with these developments any consideration given to that. The whole drainage peat environmental issue, to be honest, has been very poorly dealt with, I have to say. And I would encourage anybody as well to look at the flood risk report that we had done, and also to look at the submissions from Bromley Road, because there's somebody with some quite extensive experience on these matters there that has put some very pertinent questions in terms of the attenuation tank design, the drainage out of the site, the culvert designs where the surface water from all these sites is going to go. And again, one of my main issues is, why is nobody able to comment on the fact that all the surface water from these sites are going through Potwood?
Councillor Brown,
sorry.
You are asked to answer the question.
I apologise.
Not use it as an opportunity to afford a further extension of time.
Understand.
Thank you. I appreciate your efforts. So I just, if I don't tell you off, I will get into trouble because I might.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, of course, I will have to reprimand you, Chair, if you don't mind me being so bold. Now, I'm sure that we will return to this issue. So I don't want this to be a leading question, but maybe it is for somebody else to judge. Do you think that an updated assessment of these issues, of these matters, should be submitted, particularly since in the last 3 or 4 years, or however long, in the last few years since that assessment was submitted? Yes, there is a climate emergency, and I'm sure I saw something the other night that was suggested we were heading for the worst case scenario, or in risk of that. So it's I suppose a simple question. Do you think another assessment is called for?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll try and be brief. It would probably be, what would it be now? Maybe 4 years ago that the assessment was done. As I say, I think it really needs looking at in serious detail with the drainage, with the impact of the peat, perhaps a more extensive survey being done on the site, because I think really then only with that data can a reasonable decision be made. I don't think at the moment it's really possible to make that decision, because I don't believe the work's been done and presented with sufficient justification.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Brown.
Okay. Thank you. I can see no further questioners in the inbox, so I'm going to say thank you very much, Councillor Brown. If you can turn your camera and your microphone off now, please. Thank you. I'm now going to call Town Councillor Fiona Wilson, representing Macclesfield Town Council, to address the board. Councillor Wilson, can you please turn on your screen and your camera, please?
Yes, I've done. Can you hear and see me, Chair?
I can hear you, and I can now see you, Councillor Wilson, and you have 2.5 minutes to speak, and you may be asked questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, councillors. Macclesfield Town Council Planning Committee has discussed this application on a number of occasions, and our comments, which cover a wide range of concerns, are detailed at pages 14 and 15 of your agenda pack. Macclesfield Town Council also supports the comments made by other speakers in opposition to this application, and I will specifically cover 3 points: air quality, roads and footways, and public services. In respect of air quality, the planning officer's report states that air quality impacts were assessed at the outline planning stage. The report goes on to state that a package of mitigation measures were secured, but these are by no means certain. As we've already heard from Councillor Mannion, that the highway improvement scheme at Broughton Cross is at risk with an application for this condition to be removed. And whilst traffic levels reduced in 2020 due to COVID, when traffic levels inevitably rise again, air quality will further degrade, and the Broughton Cross junction, as we've already heard, will be a major contributing factor. With such uncertainty around air quality at Broughton Cross, it will be irresponsible to allow further traffic increases without remedial action being put into place, especially as it's now well understood that poor air quality can have such a major impact on human health. In respect of roads and footways, you've been advised that the proposal would provide cycle and pedestrian access to Worley Road and onto Footpath 19, which runs from Worley Road to Victoria Road via the Greenside Estate. However, this footpath is certainly not suitable for cycling and is very narrow in places and will not provide an alternative to the very busy and polluted A537. The internal footpaths are described in the master plan as a recreational corridor and will not be suitable for cycling. With a number of buses halved since the original application, as we've heard, and no shops, schools or services in close proximity to the site, the number of car journeys will significantly increase. In summary, there are no safe walking routes to nearby schools. Turning to schools and medical services, 2 lines are devoted to infrastructure issues in this report, which states that concerns about schools and medical services have been considered and with mitigation deemed acceptable. So let's look at the facts. Worley Primary School is full. Fallybroom High School is full. Titherington High School, which is some 2.6 miles away.
Okay, Councillor Wilson, can you bring to a close, please? Thank you.
2.6 miles away from this proposed development is applying for an extra 150 additional school places due to increasing pupil population and new housing. And medical services are under pressure as never before. Much has changed since this application was made in 2017. Refuse or defer to get the much needed updated information to assist you to make an informed decision. Thank you
very much. I did allow you to carry on beyond what I should have done. So I'm going to see whether or not there are any questions. I'm going to wait a while because the last time I said no and there appeared. It would appear that there are no questions for you, Councillor Wilson. So thank you very much for your time. Please turn off your camera and your microphone and continue to listen to the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Right. We now call upon Richard Slater to address the board, and Mr. Slater is a objector.
Good morning, Chairman. Can you see me?
I can see and hear you. So you have 3 minutes, and after which time you may be asked questions by members of the board. So please start speaking now.
Thank you. At time of outline application for this site, the Strategic Planning Board heard all the applications for LPS 18 and LPS 16 land north and south of Chelford Road. And in summing up, Councillor Jill Murray, who was the chair, confirmed that she required the reserved matters and any discharge of applications to come back before the same Strategic Planning Board for the purpose of the cumulative effect. So for that reason, initially, I would like you to defer this application until these all come together. Housing supply. Cheshire East has got a really good housing supply at the moment, the 7.5 years supply. Macclesfield has got a large brownfield bank. Currently, there's 356 houses for sale in Macclesfield and 179 rental properties available. So when we talk about this, we're not just talking about 134 houses, we're talking about nearly 450. And again, their impact on Broughton Cross and application 195442M, which is going to be heard at another time, which we'd like to hear it at the same time. Now, Councillor Hogben mentioned about education. Now, the road, the A537, Chelford Road, is England's most dangerous A road. It's official, and I know from personal experience because my mother-in-law was killed on it. So I can tell you that the children walking from this site along Chelford Road in the morning, the queues of cars, and in the evening can be 150 vehicles long, and the children will be walking along through the pollutants to get to school. When they get to, as they approach Burton Cross, they walk into the AQMA, one of the worst in Cheshire, and then they've got to cross the A537. There isn't any pedestrian crossing, so they've got to cross that road. They've then got to negotiate Goresforth Road, another very busy road which has a junction to the Tesco Express, which again is the busiest in Cheshire, and then they've got to cross the third road, get to school with their lungs, clothes and hair full of pollutants from the traffic. So it's been mentioned before, but we must refer back to poor Ella Kissy Dibber in London, who died from inhaling all these toxins walking to and from school. Now, secondary education, there isn't any locally. The school's full. The nearest education is 2.5 miles. So these people have either got to be taken to school through the AQMA, increasing the pollution, or find alternative routes. But you certainly wouldn't want your child walking or cycling along Chelford Road and the A537. We've also mentioned the community woodland.
Please draw your speech to an end. Thank you very much.
Could Mr. Law show the community woodland? It was showed the new woodland, but he didn't show the community woodland and the scale of it. Thank you.
I will ask that question. So are there any questions to Mr. Slater, please? In that case, Mr. Slater, thank you very much for joining us this morning. If you'd like to turn off your camera and your microphone and continue listening to the debate.
Thank you.
Right, before we go to the next speaker, it was remiss of me earlier on not to declare an interest. The next speaker, Mr. Suckley, and I's paths have crossed regularly over the years, given that I was a professional planner and there were occasions when we would meet. I haven't seen him, apart from his appearances regularly at this committee for several months, but I have certainly not had an opportunity to discuss either the applications presented to us this morning with him. So that piece of administration completed. Mr. Suckley, would you like to turn your camera and your microphone on in order that you can address the board, please?
Good morning. I'm John Suckley and I'm the planning agent. Bear will thank officers for their hard work in preparing the comprehensive committee report and for their recommendation for approval. As we have heard, the site was removed from the Greenbelt and allocated for housing in the council's local plan. In 2019, outline permission was also granted for the residential development, and therefore the principle of housing at the site is established. This planning application presents the details for the reserve matters. Bellway is a highly experienced house builder and has appointed a team of experienced consultants to prepare the detailed design for the site. Bellway has fully considered all comments provided by local residents and key stakeholders. The application is, however, entirely acceptable for the following reasons. 1. The application proposes 134 dwellings and is in line with the parameters of the outline planning permission. The proposed density of development will be 30 dwellings per hectare. A broad mix of housing is proposed, including 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom properties, which will create a mixed housing development. Smaller, more affordable houses are proposed than were envisaged at the outline stage. 30% affordable housing amounting to 40 dwellings will be provided. 3. An attractive housing development is proposed which has been sensitively designed and includes character areas, a strong landscape framework including a leap and soft edge to the Greenbelt, a well-designed road hierarchy which balances highways and design requirements, a pedestrian cycle connection through to Worley Road, and house designs which respect the character of the area, providing dual aspects and feature properties in key locations. 4. The application has been supported by a full suite of ecology surveys and a Great Crested mitigation area is proposed. 5. An arboricultural assessment has been prepared and a replacement community woodland and extensive hedgerow planting resulting in a net gain of 504 metres of native hedging is proposed. 6. The site is located within Flood Zone 1 and a comprehensive scheme of surface water attenuation and a detailed drainage strategy is proposed, which will serve the development and improve the current pooling in the northwest corner of the site. 7. Extensive remediation, enabling works and piling reports have been prepared and submitted with this application, and pile foundation techniques are proposed which will minimise peat removal. No peat will be removed off-site. And 8. Principal highways and air quality matters were determined at the outline stage. Appropriate car parking, a construction environmental management plan, a dust management plan, and electrical vehicle charging points are provided. No objections are raised to the application by the Council's housing, design, landscape, open space, ecology, trees, flood, environmental protection and highways officers, Natural England and United Utilities. The development will be high quality, and it's respectfully requested that members resolve to grant reserved matters consent in line with your officer's recommendation. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, are there any questions? Right, I've got Councillor Williams first, and I have a couple of questions, and then Councillor Farrell. So Councillor Williams first, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Suckley. I'll be asking most of the technical questions to the officers, but on the peat issue, I understand no peat will be removed from the site, but there has been concerns expressed as to what happens to it and whether it, if it stays on site, but does it sort of mitigate the issues with surface water, or does it give off sulfates, etc. From your point of view, if that peat remains on site, could you just give us a little bit more detail as to what actually happens to it when it's on site, and you know what the effects are?
Yeah, sure. We're obviously, as I mentioned in my speech, looking to reduce as far as possible the actual peat removal from areas in the site by using piling foundation techniques. As you've mentioned, no peat will be removed off-site at all. I did mention that one of the speakers said that there has been inadequate consideration of peat and drainage on the site, but I can confirm that a remediation and enabling work strategy was submitted with the planning application, which has been uploaded to the council's website, and a detailed drainage strategy has been provided as well, and the two work together to ensure that all sort of site ground conditions and remediation and drainage matters are acceptable. They have been provided to the council, and the council's technical experts in its drainage and environmental health departments have reviewed those and have raised no objections.
Okay, thank you. If I may just have one more question, that's to come back to an issue that Councillor Barber raised in his questions, and also I notice it's something that Macclesfield Civic Society has commented on, and that's about distinctiveness of design. I think you're right, from what I can see, it is a high quality build, it's high quality design in there, and much aspects to admire, certainly in comparison with other applications that have come before this board. However, in the light of there being some sort of distinctiveness around the area that Councillor Barber's alluded to, and I know the area, and I agree with the point that he's raised, there are some sort of distinctive properties around the site there. Do you think that there could be a place for making some more distinctiveness, perhaps on the edges or the approaches to the site, or do you feel that what's there is perfectly adequate?
I feel that the proposals are adequate in their current form. We've had extensive dialogue with your design and landscape officers. There are 3 character areas proposed across the site: a woodland area, a streets area, and an avenue area. And within each of those areas, there are different distinctive features which are proposed, which pick up on features which you see on older properties in the area. So, for example, in the woodland area, we talked, Mr. Law presented in his presentation about how those properties take a bit more of a cottage style feel, and in other areas there are different approaches with black and white timber boarding, or black timber with brick detailing. So there's also setbacks from roads, the different in height. So there's a lot of interest in the development, and there's different materials used around the highway network as well, ranging from sort of tegular sets, tar macadam, and other sort of appropriate features as well. I did note that Councillor Barber did recognise that across the road on Worley Road there was a new housing estate that has built as well, and so it's not uncommon for these types of properties to be provided in this area, and I think the development has gone a long way to try and respect and relate to distinctive features in the area.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is that all, Councillor Williams? Thank you. That's clearly Councillor Farrell.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, hello, Mr. Suckley. I've got just 2 questions, please. You just mentioned then, I'm just picking up from Councillor Williams. You just mentioned then the design types of the houses taking accents of, well, you said black and white timber board, and I'd call it mock Tudor, just to give an impression of what it looks like. I'm just interested, because obviously I know quite well, I'm just interested to know where you've taken inspiration for, or the applicant has taken inspiration from that in the immediate area into the design area.
So as part of the planning application, the design officers requested that a character area appraisal was undertaken of the local area. And that appraisal was put together by the scheme architects, and that all the features that you see on the new development are reflected in the existing area currently. And what Bellway and their designers have done is then created 3 character areas on site, which then distinctively relate to the features which are shown in the area.
Okay, I'm still unsure because obviously I'm not aware of any great abundance of mock Tudor in that area. Second question, you might not know because obviously you're representing the applicant. Second question in regards to the housing mix. Obviously, this is top of page 20 on the agenda pack for anyone following along. The Maxfield home choice. Maxfield home choice first is sorry, people waiting on the waiting list for Maxfield in home choice is 1,425, of which 799 are 1 bedroom and 388 are 2 bedrooms. So that represents about an 80%, in my maths, about 80% demand for 1 and 2 bedroom houses. Obviously, looking at the proposed development proposes about 80% or more.
Councillor Farrell, can you ask a question, please? I'm being reminded that this is questions.
Do you think the housing mix proposed is representative of the demand?
Yes, entirely. And I think, as we heard Mr. Law set out in his presentation earlier on, the outline application envisaged much larger houses, 5-bedroom houses. And if we'd have stuck with the mix on the outline application, then there would have been larger houses proposed as part of this development. What we've tried to do is skew the mix to provide smaller properties on the site, 1 beds, 2 beds, which has resulted in an increased number, but yet the density is still appropriate. And just to come back to your initial question, if the officers were to show you the character area appraisal that was undertaken, it shows that there are properties, there's photographs of properties with mock Tudor in the area.
Thank you. I'll be interested to see that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Farrell. And finally, Councillor Jeffrey, your question, please.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Mr. Suckley. Two questions, I think. On the flooding issue, I read in the officer's report that surface water flooding occurs in the southern part of the site, which would appear to be an overland route for culvert surcharging. Now, are you aware of that? What's the plan to deal with that? Because obviously that's not surface water coming from the rain, it's a surcharging culvert. So what's the plan for that? Is that on the, I couldn't see details of that on the schemes.
Yeah, so there's been a full detailed drainage assessment that's been undertaken as part of the application. We're looking to make 3 connections to surface water drains. There is one on the eastern boundary, there's one in the southeastern boundary, and there's one at Shelford Road as well. We're proposing an attenuation tank on site, and it's been designed to a 1 in 100 year event plus climate change, which in this instance is 30%. There will be valves that are proposed on the network, and the site will discharge a greenfield rate, which has been agreed with the local lead flood authority. So all due diligence has been undertaken, and the development has been designed to ensure that there is an appropriate discharge on the site. There is actually going to be part of the culvert is going to be diverted within the site as well. And a high quality new chamber is going to be provided, which I think is 1 metre by 0.8 metres. So it's very high quality kit which is being proposed.
Okay, thanks. And Chair, my second question, and I don't know whether you'll allow this because I don't think it related to any of the points Mr. Suckley made, but I was just curious about why the site's been split into the 2 applications.
Just purely because we can make one application under reserve matters up to a number of 135 houses, and then it requires a separate application for the additional units, which is 23, which needs to come forward as part of a full planning application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Suckley. I have one question for you. It also relates to page 20 regarding the share of non-social housing, and that is that of the 94 proposed properties that are going to be available for purchase, only 2 of those are not 3 and 4 bedroom, and I want to know on what grounds you feel it's appropriate not to provide 1 and 2 bedroom units for people to purchase.
Bellway are obviously bringing forward a mix of properties which they feel is required in the local area, and properties which they feel will meet their sort of their sales requirements in the most appropriate way, and that's the mix that is being proposed. Sorry. As I mentioned, we have reduced down. There's no 5-bedroom properties. The number of 4-bedroom properties is reduced down as well. So you can see there's a good number of 3-bedroom properties available.
So you're suggesting that the split of house types for sale is based on local information about what is likely to be sought after by the people of Macclesfield or those living in immediate and Henbury, of course.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, I don't believe there are any other questions. So if you would like to turn off your camera and your microphone, and thank you very much for joining us today. Though I'm sure we'll be seeing you again very shortly.
Thank you
very much. Okay, right. Bear with me a second while I get my papers in order. Right. Do officers wish to respond to any points raised by the public speakers or the questions raised there too? Mr. Law or Mr. Malcolm, do either of you wish to come back?
Yes, please, Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Law, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, a number of quite complex issues have been raised, and I think if we'll deal with the main ones that really sort of stretch back to the principle of developing the site for housing, and we'll move on to sort of the highways impact. As I set out in my preamble to members, that highway impact has been assessed rigorously at outline stage, and that was assessed in the round cumulatively with the other sites that are within the vicinity of the site, including the larger one to the south of Shelford Road. And what that secured was basically a highway improvement scheme to Broken Cross to basically signalise, remove the roundabout at Broken Cross and signalise it with a traffic controlled junction. And that was to better manage the traffic flows, and as a result of that also better manage the air quality impacts in the air quality management area around Broken Cross. So we've already secured and accepted that. Now Obviously, various speakers, including Councillor Barber and Councillor Mannion, have mentioned the application that we've got in at the moment to remove the requirement to deliver that highway improvement scheme under condition 6 of the outline. Now, the council have recently received that application, and we're currently considering it. So it's too premature to say what the council's view is on that application at the moment. But what we are going to have to do is assess whether this site, the outline approval, would still need to deliver that highway improvement scheme, or it could get away with not providing it, and it would then fall to the remaining site to the south of Chelford Road to deliver that highway improvement works. Now, that is totally separate to this reserve matters, and because members aren't considering the the principle of development and the highway impact as part of this, those applications do not need to be considered together. That application, in terms of removing condition 6, needs to be assessed on its own merits, and that will be at a later meeting. This proposal does not prejudice or come back to details of highway impact or air quality. So members are quite safe to determine this application today on that basis. So in terms of the other applications as well, the one that we're in receipt of to the south of Chelford Road, again, outline approval's already been granted for that. And so on that basis, we will be considering the detailed reserve matters for that as well. But in terms of the reserve matters, they relate to very site-specific detailed matters, and so they don't correlate with each other in terms of site-specific detail. So they don't need to be considered together in the same way that the outline approvals did, where the cumulative impacts were assessed. So we wouldn't have brought this item, and indeed wouldn't have brought this item before members today if we considered that they needed to be considered together. So that's those points dealt with. In terms of the flood risk, there have been detailed drainage schemes submitted, which have been assessed by the Flood Risk Authority, that's us, and also United Utilities. And with the mitigation proposed, which I think Mr. Suckley outlined, but that would include attenuation tanks, land drains, amongst other things, a lift in levels in part of the site, which which officers are satisfied with. So in the round, it's considered that the surface water impact would actually be improved and it wouldn't be made worse. So the development could be accommodated on site without causing drainage and surface water impacts. Now, just moving on to another point that's been picked up, and that relates to peat deposits. Now, it's just important to just clarify that this application is supported by a remediation and enabling work strategy, which has been available for members of the public to view on the website since July last year, and that does include within it a detailed suite of what will happen in terms of the peat. As the agent for the applicant has confirmed, there's going to be no peat removal from the site at all. There will be some sort of strategy to move certain peat deposits. In terms of peat, because of its structure, it won't be able to, in terms of the internal roads, just as an example, because of the bearing issues, the load bearing issues, those areas, the peat, where there is peat, will need to be removed and placed elsewhere on the site. In respect of where the properties lie, where those would fall on top of peat, there are various strategies that will be used, including pile foundation techniques, which means that the peat won't necessarily need to be removed from beneath those properties, but you know, foundation techniques will need to be used in place of those. So we're satisfied that there won't be any peat removal. There will be peat extraction, but it won't be removed from the site. It will be deposited elsewhere. The only other point I probably wanted to come back on was the biodiversity. In terms of ecology, our nature conservation officer is satisfied that, subject to an updated new strategy, which was recommended at condition 12 of the agenda reports pack on page 30, or failing that, entry onto the Natural England District Licensing Scheme, that there won't be a biodiversity loss, there will be a net gain. So on that basis, we're happy with the ecological and biodiversity impacts. All right, thank you, Chair.
Okay, before you go, I've got 3 councillors wishing to ask questions, so I'm going to call them in the order I saw them on my screen. So that's councillors, right, we've now got 4. So that's councillors Hogben, Williams, Jeffrey and Farrell in that order. So Councillor Hogben, if you'd like to ask your question, please.
Yeah, there might be 1 or 2. Actually, one of my questions relates to a comment that Mr. Law has just made, and where he basically says we have to take all these applications individually on their merits in good order, and so therefore we should not take any notice of the application to do away with the roundabout, which was, you know, a key part of the I would have thought, of the outline planning approval. So could it not be argued that it's premature to decide on any of these housing matters before that the decision has been taken on the removal of condition 6? That's question 1. The other question might be easier to answer, I don't know. I did ask much earlier on about whether ANSA had been consulted on this application, and the answer was yes. I see no evidence for that in the papers presented to me. Actually the updates that were circulated the other day mentioned the play area on the other application, the application for only 23 houses, which we will come to later. So as far as I'm concerned, ANSA has not. I haven't got the evidence that ANSA has actually been consulted on the locally equipped area of play for this main site. It said at first, when it says here in the report, positioned centrally within the open space, my first thought was, well, it's not central to the site. But yes, but it is central to the open space, which is tucked away to the west of the site. And is that a safe place? Is that a safe place on the far edge of the site? Is it overlooked? Is it within? Is it supervised by nearby houses? Is it a safe place for children to play? Because older children may well play there unsupervised. But I would argue that ANSA has not. I haven't seen the evidence that ANSA was actually consulted on this this specific open space provision at this stage, and I would like an answer about the actual safety of having the play area on the edge of the site, where it may well be out of view and shaded by trees and stuff at the edge of the site.
Okay.
2 questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Law, would you like to address those questions, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hogben. Just in terms of the other application to remove condition 6, what that will do for members is, and also officers as well, that allows opportunity to consider the highway impact and also the air quality impact of the outline decision to approve up to 135 units on this site. So what we will then be doing is reviewing whether that highway improvement scheme is actually required to mitigate the impacts of up to 135 units. In terms of this Reserve Matters application, what you're considering is the detail as I set out from the outset. So this doesn't prejudice members because this falls with the outline. So at this moment in time today, members, you are considering this application with the proposed mitigation that's secured by the outline under condition 6. So if you were to grant planning permission for the Reserve Matters today, that would be with those highway improvement works and also with the air quality mitigation that comes with that as well. In terms of that application to remove condition 6, that's for consideration at a later date, and quite rightly, officers and members will need to consider the highway impact of doing that and also the air quality impact of doing that. So that's the answer to your first question. Officer's advice, you do not need to consider those together, and that's for the reasons I've just expressed. In terms of consultation with ANSWER on this item, that has taken place. We have not received a response from them. However, in terms of the open space requirements, they are covered within the section 106 of the outline consent, and what that does is it prescribes the makeup and quantum of open space. Now, this proposed layout accords with that, so it provides the right amount of open space and also a leap. What we need to secure is a bit more detail about the pieces of play equipment that will make up that leap. And you'll note that on condition 5 on page 30, we have actually requested that detail. So that detail will be submitted to us, and that will go to ANSWER for approval by them, and also as part of the 106 agreement as well, which is attached to the outline. I think that answers your 2 questions, except in terms of moving back to the open space, it is shifted to the west of the site, but it is well overlooked from properties that are adjoining it, and you can see that in your key plans pack if you look at the proposed layout. So yeah, it's shifted towards the edge of the site, but it's well overlooked by properties, a number of properties, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 properties at least. So we're satisfied that it would be well overlooked and safe from that perspective in terms of surveillance. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I note your responses, Mr. Law. So it appears that ANSWER hasn't been actually consulted on the detail for this one, as you've just said. But
no, he said they had been consulted. They would be reconsulted.
That was consulted on the outline, though, wasn't it, Chairman?
No, he said they were consulted on this application. They have not responded. He then made reference to their earlier reference to the outline application, but he also said that when the details that were required to comply with that condition were submitted, they would be further consulted.
Okay, so yeah, there is a reference in the updates to the details actually under 3098, which is the next application. So maybe that covers it. I don't know, but it is somewhat confusing to a simple soul like me. The other thing is.
Is this a question, Councillor Hogben, or are we going?
It is a question, Chairman. I perhaps put it to you. I don't want to put it to you, but surely the reserved matters application has to be kind of within the parameters of the outline approval. And if the outline approval is going to be subject to change, a significant change, surely it makes sense to then decide the detailed matters once that has been done. To me, to say, well, we're going to decide this and then we'll see about traffic impacts and that later is putting the cart before the horse is one way.
I can understand why you might be asking that question, and I may have a question for Mr. Law myself when my colleagues have completed asking theirs.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay. Can I please call on Councillor Williams to ask his questions of Mr. Law, please? And can I remind members that this is questions and not to verge into the debate?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Law, I can understand looking at these things in bite-sized chunks, as it were, but just on a helicopter view, cumulative effect question, really. The water, surface water mitigation, you're talking about that in relation to the site. There was a question during from one of the public speakers about the possible effect on ancient woodland and water runoff if water mitigation is taken on the site. Have you taken into account what that might be, the effect of any water mitigation on this site, how it will affect other sites adjacent to this particular one? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Williams. In terms of our in-house specialist advice from our nature conservation officer, when he reviews applications such as this, he will take into account the surface water and drainage issues, and also any locally designated sites within the vicinity that are likely to be affected. So in terms of surface water drainage and those going into watercourses and where those will travel to, yes, that is taken into account, and that's not been raised as an issue by our nature conservation officer. So hopefully that gives you a bit of reassurance.
Okay, I do find myself with deja vu on some of these things with other applications I'm aware of. Saying that, but that's a debate issue. Just on the peat issue, I noticed Councillor Edson's going to ask a question. He had raised an issue earlier about sulphate, so I don't want to steal his thunder, but to a certain extent you've answered the question about peat and how that will be dealt with. I'm still like to have a little bit more information as to actually what happens to the peat while it's on the site. Does it give off sulfates? Does it help the ecology and the water retention issues, or are there issues that still need to be addressed around that? Thanks.
Right, okay, thank you. In terms of sulfates and stuff, that's really beyond my area of expertise. In terms of consultation, we have consulted with our environmental protection officers, and in terms of the peat kind of information, that's included within the remedial strategy. So that's been reviewed by the environmental protection contaminated land officers. So they have reviewed that information. Again, they've not raised any concern or issue in respect of any ground gases that would be emitted from the peat and whether it be moved. So hence why it's recommended for approval, and we're satisfied with the peat relocation within the site. In terms of drainage, yeah, I mean peat does have a different makeup in terms of water retention to various other soils, but again, our flood risk team and officers have reviewed the submission and are satisfied from that perspective that ground conditions will be okay and surface water drainage will be acceptable as well with the detailed drainage scheme. So I can't go in because it's not my area of expertise. I can't really go into great detail about sulfates and things like that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. You. Okay, so I've now moved the screen on. So I think it is Councillor Jeffrey and then Councillor Farrell and then Councillor Redstone. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thanks, Chair. 3 questions if I can. So on the peat issue, it would be. We've got a bit of an issue in Wilmslow about peat extraction as well, and it would be remiss of me not to ask, but how is it going to be enforced if there does, like one of the speakers earlier was saying, there turns out to be a lot more peat than expected? How's that going to be enforced? Is it possible to have a condition in that an inspection is carried out once the peat has fully been removed to ensure that no excess peat's been taken off site? I don't know how that would work. Secondly, on the air quality, I realise that it's a reserved matters issue, but we are being asked to approve more houses than we were expecting, albeit smaller ones. So we've got 30 more north of Chalford Road and 35 below on the previous application or current application. Does the previous assessments carried out allow for such an uplift in the area? And thirdly, condition 6, am I understanding it correctly that application will come back to this committee rather than under delegated authority? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Thank you, Chair. I'll just deal with the in terms of the air quality issue. We'll deal with that first. As I've said, without repeating myself, that we can't consider that as part of the reserve matters. In terms of the uplift of numbers, taking all the sites in the round, that additional 23 units, what members can do and will be for consideration as part of item number 6 is the impact that those 23 units will have on the highway impact and air quality impact. So that will be for consideration and deliberation under that application. You can't consider it under this reserve matters application, so hopefully that helps. Condition 6, the application to remove that, it will be reported back to the Strategic Planning Board. That's our intention. In the absence of that, I know it's been called in by the local ward councillors, but we will be bringing it back anyway. In terms of the first question and peat, what we could do if members are minded to approve it, we could have an additional condition recommended, which basically said in the event that there's any variation in terms of what's reported in the remedial strategy, that they're then to submit further details for our approval to ensure that the levels of peat being extracted is acceptable. So that's one option available. In terms of enforcing it, they would need to comply with the detail that's submitted within the reports. But like I said, that condition could factor in for any things that happen on site once the construction element starts, and by the nature, things may be found. But you only know that, once you actually get on site and start excavating, because this remedial strategy that supports the scheme is based on trial pits. So it's a representative sample, if that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Okay, do you want to come back, Councillor Jeffrey, on any of those points?
Yeah, just Mr. Law, can you reiterate what that condition would be? Because that may form part of a proposal or may not.
Mr. Law, can you come back and...
Yeah, sure. So it would basically, this is obviously would be a headline rather than the detailed wording, but it would require submission of a further peat mitigation strategy in the event that there was any variance to the details of mitigation shown in the report that's been submitted with the application.
Okay, thanks very much. Cheers.
Okay, thank you very much. Just check Councillor Farrell and then Councillor Redstone.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, Mr. Law. Councillor Jeffrey's still on. I'm not seeing Mr. Law.
That's not a problem. You can carry on. Councillor Jeffrey will turn his screen off in a minute. Thank you. Okay, carry on, Councillor Farrell.
Yeah, just a couple of questions, Ms. Law. In regards to the character assessment, as the applicant described, from where have you, that the council has provided, from where have the council officers found mock Tudor housing examples in the immediate area? I'm just interested to know that, because I'm not aware of any as far as I'm aware.
Is that the only question you have, or do you have a number?
Yeah.
Okay. Fine.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Councillor Farrell. Thank you. In terms of the character assessment, that wasn't undertaken by the council. We need to be clear on that. That was at the request of the council's design team, design officers. So that was required of the applicant. They then did that. There've been various amendments to that following discussions and queries from our design officers. In terms of the mock Tudor, I believe it's a small development, which I think the agent for the application, Mr. Suckley, mentioned to the north of Chelford Road, Worley Road, on a more modern development. But I'm not specifically aware, without going back through the character assessment, of which properties are referred to within that. So that's all I can say at the moment.
Thank you. On the second question, I have to ask this because I would like you to just touch on it. As you know, Councillor Mannion, the portfolio holder and cabinet member for the environmental regen, has mentioned it about this unlawful levels of air quality levels. Was this known when the outline permission was given? And also in the outline stages, it did say 2020 further modelling in 2020 would be done. When in 2020 was this done? I only mention it because I wouldn't feel right approving an application where aspects of it are deemed actually unlawful.
Okay. In terms of the air quality at Broken Cross at the time the outline was considered, there were levels, and it's acknowledged within the original committee report, were deemed to be unlawful. And various monitoring and lots of investigations were undertaken, not only by us as a council, but also other third parties, and they were rigorously assessed. Now, in terms of the mitigation package, we secured various measures, mainly the highway improvement scheme works, which would basically change how traffic is managed around Broken Cross. And in addition to that, in terms of site-specific mitigation through electric vehicle charging points throughout the development, and also a travel plan. So we were satisfied as an authority that we would bring basically reduce the air quality impacts at Broken Cross as a result of the proposals. So yeah, we acknowledged as an authority at the time when we considered that there were air quality impacts, but this development in the round with the other developments that are required to provide the highway improvement works would bring air quality down and improve it, and certainly wouldn't make it worse. And then
Mr. Law has disappeared.
Okay, thank you.
That's me, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Farrell, have you finished? Right, Councillor Redstone, please.
Thank you. Right, my question, the first of my questions is regarding the age of the site. This peat bed was probably started to be laid down about 12,000 years ago. I can't see any mention in this application and your submission regarding archaeology. I mean, we've all heard of bodies being found in peat bogs and so on, and given the age of this bed, it's quite likely that there might be something there. Why is there? Am I wrong? I just scanned it again and I can't find any mention of that. Is that something you didn't consider when you looked at this application?
Thank you, Councillor Redstone. In planning terms, the site isn't designated, it isn't afforded any kind of protection or designation as an area for archaeological potential. So on that basis, it's unreasonable for us to require or request any kind of archaeological survey of the site. It's already been allocated in the local plan for development for residential purposes for around 150 units, and we've already consented by virtue of the outline up to 135 units on the site. So it's not really a consideration for part of this scheme because it's not designated as having a high potential for archaeological remains. If for whatever reason, when they come to carry out works on site, it will be afforded similar protections as any other development would be if things were found, but that will be separate and outside of the planning process. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. The other issue is just the one that you raised, that this site in LPS 18 is expected to deliver around 150 new dwellings. I know from previous experience of dealing with officers that 150 might well mean 165. And my colleague, Councillor Jeffries, mentioned I think 188 houses were proposed for this site through various applications. What will happen if we give this approval for 134 houses? Will it end up at 165, or could it might end up at whatever all the applications come together as? In other words, is there a cap on the number of houses you can build on LPS 18?
Right, okay. There isn't a gap, and that's why, there isn't a cap, and that's why in the designation of the local plan, it says around 150. Now, in terms of this proposal, the outline limits what can be developed on as part of the outline and reserve matters to 135. So this proposal is for 134, so it's within that requirement, but taken with an adjoining development to the east, which we've already approved outline consent for 30 houses, which is still within the allocation. That would take the development to
165.
165, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 164, considering that we've only got 134 proposed today.
Yeah, but you've given outline permission for 135.
Yeah.
So they could come back to you and ask for the other one if they wished.
Potentially, but that would then be increased by the item that's for consideration under agenda item number 6 for the additional 23 units. So that would take the total, if permission was granted today for this and item number 6, that would take it to 187. Now, the reasons for officers accepting that and recommending approval is on the basis that this site has shown a makeup of smaller units, which has allowed an uplift and increase in number of units to that was shown at the outline. The outline showed larger properties, for example, it was referenced earlier, 5-bed properties. There aren't any proposed as part of this scheme. It's 1, 2, 3 and 4 beds, which are smaller in size. So we're happy that that uplift can be accommodated on the site, and that's why we've not objected to it. Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. So the other issue obviously is peat. You mentioned air quality. The other thing which peat will obviously give off once you start letting it dry out is carbon dioxide. Has that been taken into account? How many tons is this site going to generate? Is that going to be offset?
In terms of the emissions,
mitigation.
Yeah, in terms of the emissions for peat, I haven't got that information in front of me in terms of what that would give off and the impacts that would have on air quality. But in terms of tonnage, again, I haven't got that information. But my view is that that wouldn't have a bearing on members determining this application today. So, like I said, we've got no objections from environmental protection officers, including our officer that deals with air quality, and also the officer that deals with contaminated land, which also deals with ground gas, and they have reviewed obviously the remediation strategy, which talks in length about the peat deposits and potential gas generation by those. Again, apologies, it's outside my area of expertise. So,
right, thank you very much.
Okay, is that all, Councillor Redstone?
That's all my questions, Chair.
Okay, I have two very short questions, Mr. Law. The first relates to the oversight of the LEAP. I cannot tell from the drawings I have in front of me whether or not the two semi-detached properties, one which is immediately opposite the long end of the LEAP and one which is immediate opposite one of the short ends of the LEAP, are properties that have windows that overlook what appear to be the side of those properties, but it's possible that they are sideways on. If you can just clarify that. And my second question relates to condition number 6 that has been referred to ad infinitum today, and whether or not that condition is a requirement for a scheme to be developed for the Broken Cross Junction, or whether it is a scheme for funding of such a junction, and whether or not the applicants are seeking to remove the need for the junction or remove their need to fund it.
okay, thank you, Chairman. In terms of the properties overlooking the leap, I mean, all the properties, especially the one overlooking the long side of it, as you describe it, that is a corner turner, so that is overlook. That does have windows, main windows as well, overlooking that. Equally, the other unit to the short end has windows and main elevation directly overlooking that leap. In terms of the in terms of condition number 6, what that required was the delivery of a detailed highway improvement scheme to Broken Cross. Now, that was actually worked up in detail as part of the consideration of the outline schemes when they were determined. So we do have, and this was shown to members of the previous strategic planning board, we do have a detailed drawing of that highway improvement scheme. If you wish to see it, I can show it to you quite quickly. But basically, as I've described, that would require removal of the roundabout and provision of a traffic signal controlled junction. In terms of condition number 6, Bellway, the applicant, are applying to remove their requirement to help deliver and fund that. So what would still be a requirement would be the larger site to the south of Chelford Road. They are still subject to that requirement to deliver that highway improvement scheme. But the purpose of the other application to remove condition 6 is to remove the requirement of this site to deliver that highway improvement scheme.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. I can see no further questions in the inbox, and so as I've not been advised by the legal representative that it is inappropriate for me to call a break now, I will accede to Councillor Hogman's request and call a 10-minute break only. So can everybody be back by 12:50, please? Thank you very much.
Hello, Chairman, it's Sarah. Let me know when you're ready to go and I'll take the slide down. Just to let you know you're on mute. I put you on mute so we couldn't hear any background noise. Sorry, Chairman, I think you've gone back onto mute.
Yeah, double click, sorry. Right, it's all right. I wanted to rearrange the furniture in my office so I wasn't quite as cold. So that's why all the wires are all over the place. So I think we're probably ready to start again now. So before we commence with the rest of the meeting, I'm going to take a roll call just to ensure everybody is back and has the appropriate connectivity. So Councillor Critchley, you can turn your screen on and your microphone so you know you're here.
I can see and hear, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Steve Edgar.
Yes, I'm back, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Farrell, I can see you. Can I hear you?
Yes, you can, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Groves.
Yes, I can see and hear you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hogben. Councillor Hogben.
Yes, I can see and hear you, and I'm here.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jeffrey.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Morton. Councillor Morton.
Yes, I can see and hear.
Thank you very much. Councillor Redstone. Patrick. I'll come back to Councillor Weatherall.
I'm back, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Redstone, I can see that your screen is pulsating, but I can't see or hear you.
I have returned.
Thank you very much. And finally, Councillor Williams.
Yes, I'm here. I can see and hear. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Right, Mr. Malcolm wishes to say a few words before we move to the debate on this item. So if Mr. Malcolm, if you can please turn your screen and your camera on, please.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose it was just a kind of, we've also had a lengthy set of questions and speakers, so it's really just a sort of maybe just amplify a little bit of the comments that Rob's been making, which I fully agree with. Appreciate that a number of members won't have been involved in the original outline application, but unfortunately, from your perspective, that does constrain what we can deal with in terms of reserved matters. So, in just listening to the comments that were made, I have to say the only element that sort of was possibly related to this application is the comments around design, because all of the issues around flooding, the peat, were dealt with at length. Certainly, air quality was dealt with at length. Previously, even down to individual tube data, just to give members context of how that was assessed last time. So I think it's just to remind members that in terms of this application, we have to focus on reserved matters. There's a lot of stuff that's already been done and will be confirmed through future conditions, and we've got a few extra conditions, as alluded to in some of the comments and the questions that came out. And I think also, just to wrap up, really, we are capable of dealing with these applications on their own. There was a cumulative impact on the earlier 3 schemes that we had, which are all outlined, and that was related to the broken cross and the air quality issues. As Rob has said, we can pick up that when we look at the application to remove the condition. And to be honest, from my perspective, we're not even close to assessing that as yet. We need to look at the highways and the air quality information. And we'll make a recommendation to members in due course, but at this point in time we don't know if that will be a favourable one or not. So that's why we can look at this application in complete isolation from that particular condition, and effectively it doesn't touch this application, because if we accept the scheme, all we're doing is saying that those roundabout works either do or don't be required before they start work. So I think it was just to try and summarise it, Chairman, before we get into sort of lengthy discussion and debate about issues that to be honest, we're just going to keep coming back to members and say we dealt with as outlined. And while that's frustrating for you, I appreciate that. I can assure you, and those members that will recall, these applications have had, I would say, in terms of certainly my recent career, the most extensive interrogation of all of the allocations within the local plan. And I say that with experience as well. So please be assured that we have done due diligence before on these applications. Just one final point for Councillor Farrell. In terms of the design, I was similarly, I think that when you mentioned mock Tudor, it can set sort of some hairs racing in the wrong area. What you'll find in the area, and I think there are some examples on Worley Road, is that it's just a detailing on some of the gable ends, where you've got the black boards and then you've got some of the black and white. So yes, there are some examples of that actually in relatively close proximity on Worley Road. I'm sure if you want to go up and down on Google Street View, you'll find them, but they are there, and that's where those particular examples have been picked up. So I think it's just to try and focus the debate accordingly, Chair, just and I hope that's helpful for members to keep us on a relatively straightish track for the time being. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Malcolm. Now I intend to move to the debate, and having noted the walls with which various members represent, I believe that the nearest member, which would normally be it's normal practice to ask that the member who is nearest to the site to open the batting, and so I'm going to ask Councillor Farrell to open the debate on this item. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's a few points of issue for me on this design proposal. Mr. Malcolm's just touched on it there with the mock Tudor accents and the character design of the development. I did ask Councillor Barber at the start of the agenda item about specifically about the period designs of the houses and properties in the local area, and he didn't, although he said he didn't know particularly what a period he would be, he would have definitely said, oh yeah, there's plenty of mock Tudor about if they were, because it's a very recognisable design style. There aren't any, as far as I'm aware, mock Tudor designs in a immediate local area. I'll give you a bit of a orientation. On Chelford Road itself, after Mac, the house types there are mainly 2-3 bed, I would say 50s, 60s, typical, brick and slate houses, intermixed with some bungalows and more 20s, maybe 20s, 30s Weaver style cottages, very sparsely dispersed between them. Down Worley Road, obviously you've got the newer development of Jasmine Park, and that's all very much red brick, slate tile roofs, and again a bit further up, all the houses going on to Greenside are more, again, 50s, 60s style, typical house types. You've got some of those I call them Scandinavian style, where the roofs come right down, but none of them, and maybe a couple of upside down houses actually, but not in any way Tudor to the extent that this development proposes. It's like everything, each house type has got the mock Tudor style accents, and some of them even got upper walls decked out in it. So it doesn't really fit in with the character design of the local area, which is obviously a bit concerning. And we're in 2021 and we're talking about proposing a new development for a very dated mock Tudor style development. It's bizarre. Also, I have concerns about the housing mix. Obviously, I touched on this in the questions. The demand in Maxfield is clearly about 83% for 1 and 2 bedroom houses, and then this development is proposing just about 22% of the housing mix with 1 and 2 bedroom. It's almost opposite of what the demand is, what this development's providing. Obviously, we don't want we're not asking for the developer to provide the exact ratio of 1 and 2 bedroom houses, but with what I say, with what a more reflective mix than what we're getting at the moment. Obviously, with the peat issue that other councillors have brought up in the debate, that is a concern. I think there needs to be a more extensive survey of that, but obviously that's not, we've been told that's not reserved matters, although I would argue it is, because it goes on to landscaping, because all that extracted peat would have to be relocated on the site, and then that would affect the landscaping, wouldn't it? I'm sure it would. So that I'm concerned about that. I am also concerned about the air quality and the unlawful nature of it, but obviously we've been told we can't really consider that. But on the reserved matters items I have mentioned, I would be concerned about those, obviously concerned about those, and would be minded at the moment to defer the proposal to come back to us to addressing those matters. But I'm happy to obviously hopefully listen to the inputs of my fellow councillors on the board. Thank you.
Right. Before we go to the next speaker, can I see clarification, please, from Mr. Law or Mr. Malcolm? When we're provided with information in reports relating to home choice, are those people registering for social housing through the council, or is that a general needs assessment? People looking for housing that's also privately available to privately rent or purchase? My understanding it's the former.
Yeah, it's for the social housing makeup. That's what the home choice evidence base is for, not the market housing.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to seek clarification. I wasn't sure whether Councillor Farrell was aware of that, but it raised the question with me. So I now have a list of people wishing to take part in the debate, and I'm going to call them in the order they have requested to speak. That's Councillor Steve Edgar, Councillor Phil Williams, and Councillor David Jeffrey in that order. Anybody else wishing to speak can they either indicate in the chat box, or if they are unable to use the chat box, put their hand up. And that only relates to members of the board. I know earlier on somebody put their hand up who was ineligible to speak. Okay, so Councillor Edgar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at Google Earth and numbers 14 and